My name is Charlotte Hayes. I'm 29 years old. And the night before my wedding in Charleston, South Carolina, my father leaned close to my ear during the rehearsal dinner and whispered, "You'll ruin this family if you marry him." I froze with my champagne glass halfway to my lips. The Grand Magnolia room buzzed with laughter around us. White roses drooped from crystal vases. My fiancé Marcus was across the room telling a story to my bridesmaids, his hands animated, his smile wide. My father's breath smelled like whiskey and something bitter. "What did you say?" I asked, turning to face him. He straightened his tie, his expression cold. "You heard me, Charlotte. That boy isn't one of us. He doesn't understand our world. Your mother would be ashamed." My mother had been dead for 3 years, and he knew exactly how to twist that knife. I looked around the room. My stepmother Vivian was watching us from the corner, her lips pressed into a thin smile. My older brother Daniel pretended not to notice, suddenly fascinated by his phone. Marcus's family laughed at a table near the window, completely unaware that my world was cracking open. "Dad, Marcus is a good man. He's a civil engineer. He's from nothing," my father interrupted, his voice low and sharp. "His parents rent an apartment in North Charleston. Do you understand what people will say?" The room tilted. I'd known my father was traditional, controlling, particular about appearances. But this? The venom in his voice made my skin crawl. I thought about my mother, about how she'd taught me to stand up for what I loved, how she'd always said real wealth was in character, not bank accounts. "I'm marrying him tomorrow," I said quietly, my voice shaking. My father smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. "We'll see about that." He walked away, leaving me standing alone with a glass of champagne I could no longer taste. Across the room, Marcus caught my eye and waved, completely oblivious. I waved back, my hand trembling. What the hell did my father mean by "we'll see about that"? I didn't sleep that night. I lay in my childhood bedroom in my father's estate in Mount Pleasant, staring at my wedding dress hanging on the back of the door. It was a custom Vera Wang that had cost $8,347 paid for by my father. Everything about this wedding had been paid for by my father. The venue at Magnolia Plantation, the flowers, the photographer, the honeymoon to Italy. At 3:47 a.m., my phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. "You should check the guest list for tomorrow. Table assignments were changed an hour ago." A friend! I sat up, my heart hammering. I grabbed my laptop and logged into the wedding planning portal. Someone had accessed it at 11:23 p.m. The seating chart had been completely rearranged. Marcus's parents, John and Patricia Rivera, originally seated at table 3 near the front, had been moved to table 18, in the back corner, near the bathrooms. The table reserved for distant cousins and last-minute plus ones. My blood turned to ice. My father had done this. He'd logged into my account, using the password he'd probably guessed because he knew me too well, and he'd humiliated Marcus's family before the wedding even started. I called Marcus immediately. He answered on the first ring, his voice groggy. "Char, baby, it's almost 4 in the morning. Are you okay?" "No," I whispered. "I'm not okay." I told him everything. The whispered threat. The seating chart. My father's words about his family not being one of us. Marcus went silent for a long time, and when he finally spoke, his voice was tight with anger. "What do you want to do?" he asked. I looked at my wedding dress again. I thought about my mother, about the promise I'd made at her funeral to live authentically, to never let anyone make me small. I thought about Marcus, about the way he'd held my hand through my grief, about the kindness in his eyes. "I want to change everything," I said. "Tonight. Right now." "Then let's do it," Marcus said. "I'm coming to get you." But I couldn't leave. Not yet. Because if I ran now, my father would win, and everyone would think I was the one who couldn't handle the pressure. What I needed was something bigger, something that would expose him in front of everyone. At 6 a.m. on my wedding day, I was sitting in the Magnolia Plantation event coordinator's office with my maid of honor, Jessica Torres. Jessica was 31, a corporate lawyer with a spine of steel, and she'd been my best friend since college. She'd driven over the moment I called her. Let me get this straight, Jessica said, her eyes narrowed. Your father sabotaged the seating chart to humiliate Marcus's family because he thinks they're beneath you? Yes, I said. My eyes burned from lack of sleep. Jessica leaned back in her chair. And you want to fix this without causing a scene? I want to cause exactly the right scene, I corrected. I want everyone to see who my father really is. The event coordinator, a nervous woman named Melissa, wrung her hands. The ceremony starts in 6 hours. Any changes now will be extremely difficult. Then we'd better work fast, Jessica said, pulling out her phone. Here's what we did. We changed the seating chart back to the original arrangement, but we went further. We printed new place cards with a small detail on each one, a quote about family and respect. Marcus's parents got a card that read, "True class is treating everyone with dignity." My father's card read, "Character is who you are when no one is watching." We also made one other critical change. The head table. Originally, my father was supposed to sit to my right during the reception, in the place of honor. We moved him to table 12. We put Marcus's father, John Rivera, in that seat instead. Your dad is going to lose his mind, Jessica said, looking at the revised chart. I know, I replied. I'm counting on it. At 8:30 a.m., my father called me. Charlotte, I need you to come to the house. We need to talk about yesterday. I can't, I said. I'm at the venue, making sure everything is perfect. There was a pause. What do you mean you're at the venue? I mean, I'm checking on things, Dad, like a bride does on her wedding day. Don't touch anything, he said, his voice sharp. Everything is said exactly as it should be. I smiled at Jessica across the table. Don't worry, Dad. Everything is exactly as it should be. I hung up before he could respond. At 10 a.m., my phone rang again. This time it was my stepmother, Vivian. Her voice was syrupy sweet, the way it always was when she wanted something. Charlotte, darling, your father is very upset. He says you've been at the venue all morning. Is something wrong? Everything's fine, Vivian, I said. Just making sure my wedding is perfect. But nothing was fine, because at 11:15 a.m. I received an email from the bank. My father had frozen my access to the joint account he'd set up for wedding expenses. The account with $89,234 remaining in it. He was trying to stop the wedding. At 11:47 a.m., 3 hours before my ceremony, I sat in the bridal suite with Jessica, my bridesmaid Claire, and my cousin Amanda. My phone kept buzzing. Texts from my father. Calls from Vivian. Messages from my brother Daniel saying, just apologize to Dad, and this will all go away. But I wasn't apologizing. Not for loving Marcus. Not for refusing to be controlled. He froze the account, I told the women. We have 3 hours until the ceremony, and my father just cut off access to all the wedding funds. Claire, who was 27 and worked in event planning, went pale. Can he do that? It's a joint account, Jessica said grimly. Technically, yes. He can freeze it. The vendors need to be paid, I said. The photographer, the caterer, the band. If they don't get paid, they don't work. Marcus's family couldn't afford to cover nearly $90,000 in wedding expenses. And my father knew it. Amanda, my 33-year-old cousin who'd always been close to my mother, stood up. How much do you need right now? To keep things running? At least $15,000, I said. To pay the day of coordinator and keep the vendors from walking. Amanda pulled out her phone. I'm calling Uncle Richard. Uncle Richard was my mother's brother, the one person in the family who'd never bent to my father's will. He lived in Savannah, Georgia, and he'd been vocal about how my father had treated my mother before she died. Within 20 minutes, Uncle Richard had wired $1,700 to my personal account with a note. Your mother would be so proud of you. Don't let that bastard win. We paid the critical vendors. The wedding would go on. At 1 p.m., my father showed up at the bridal suite. He didn't knock. He just walked in, his face red with fury. You changed the seating chart, he said, his voice dangerously quiet. I was sitting at the vanity while my makeup artist worked on my eyes. I met his gaze in the mirror. Yes, I did. You will change it back immediately. No. He took a step toward me, and Jessica stood up, positioning herself between us. Mr. Hayes, Charlotte is the bride. This is her day. You need to leave. My father ignored her, his eyes locked on mine. You're making a mistake, Charlotte. A humiliating public mistake. When people see where I'm seated, they'll know something is wrong. They'll talk. Is that what you want? What I want, I said, standing up, is for you to treat my husband's family with respect. What I want is for you to stop acting like money makes you better than other people. What I want is for you to be the man my mother thought you were. His face went white. For a moment, I thought he might hit me. But Jessica's hand was on her phone, finger hovering over the record button. You'll regret this, my father said quietly. Then he turned and walked out. Claire locked the door behind him. Holy shit, Charlotte! I sat back down, my hands shaking. Let's finish my makeup. I have a wedding to get to. But as my makeup artist applied my lipstick, I couldn't shake the feeling that my father wasn't done yet. That he had one more card to play. What I didn't know was that he'd already played it. The ceremony was supposed to start at 2:30 p.m. At 2:15 p.m., I was in the bridal suite in my wedding dress, the Vera Wang fitting perfectly, my bouquet of white peonies trembling in my hands. Jessica was adjusting my veil when someone knocked on the door. It was Melissa, the event coordinator. Her face was ashen. Charlotte, there's a problem. My stomach dropped. What kind of problem? Your father is refusing to walk you down the aisle unless you change the seating chart back. He's standing in the main hallway right now, and he says he won't participate in the ceremony until you fix what you've done. The room went silent. Claire looked like she might cry. Amanda's jaw tightened. Jessica's eyes flashed with fury. I walked to the window and looked out at the garden where 187 guests were already seated. Marcus was standing at the altar with his best man, his brother, Raphael. He looked nervous, excited, happy. He had no idea what was happening behind the scenes. Tell my father, I said slowly, that if he doesn't walk me down the aisle, I'll walk myself. Melissa blinked. You'll walk yourself? Yes, I'll walk myself, I said louder now. And I'll tell everyone exactly why. Melissa scurried out. Jessica squeezed my hand. You're a badass, Charlotte Hayes. But inside I was breaking, because I'd imagined this day with my mother, and then when she died, I'd reimagined it with my father. The idea of walking alone down that aisle, of everyone knowing there was a problem, made me want to disappear. At 2:28 p.m., 2 minutes before the ceremony, there was another knock. I opened the door expecting Melissa. Instead, it was Uncle Richard. He was 58, tall and gray-haired, wearing a perfectly tailored suit. He looked so much like my mother that my eyes filled with tears. Your father is a coward, Uncle Richard said gently. But I'm not. May I have the honor? I couldn't speak. I just nodded. He offered his arm and I took it. Your mother is watching, he whispered as we walked toward the ceremony. And she's so damn proud. The music started. The doors opened. And as I walked down the aisle on Uncle Richard's arm, I saw my father sitting in the second row, his face purple with rage. Vivian beside him looked mortified. My brother Daniel wouldn't meet my eyes. But Marcus's parents, John and Patricia, sitting at table 3 where they belonged, were beaming. And Marcus, standing at the altar, was crying. When I reached him, he whispered, "You're the strongest person I've ever known." We said our vows. We exchanged rings. We kissed as husband and wife while 187 people applauded. But when we walked back down the aisle together, I saw my father stand up and walk out of the ceremony. Vivian hurried after him, her heels clicking on the stone pathway. The reception, I realized, was going to be a battlefield. The cocktail hour was tense. Guests mingled in the garden, drinking champagne and eating bacon-wrapped scallops, but I could feel the whispers. People had noticed my father's absence from the processional. People had noticed him walking out. Marcus and I were taking photos with the photographer when Jessica found us. Your father is in the parking lot, she said. He's telling people he's leaving. He's saying you disrespected him. Marcus's grip on my hand tightened. Let him leave. But I couldn't let him leave. Not like this. Because if he left, the narrative would be that I was the difficult one. the ungrateful daughter who'd humiliated her father on her wedding day. "I need to talk to him," I said. "Charlotte, no," Marcus said. "He doesn't deserve—" "I know he doesn't deserve it," I interrupted. "But I need to try one more time." I found my father near his Mercedes in the parking lot, Vivian beside him looking anxious. My brother Daniel was there too, his hands in his pockets. "Dad, please don't leave," I said. He turned to face me, his expression cold. "You've made your choice, Charlotte. You chose that boy over your family." "I chose my husband," I said. "That doesn't mean I'm choosing him over you, but you're the one making it a choice." "You humiliated me," he hissed. "You moved me away from the head table. You put his father in my place. Do you understand what that looks like? Do you understand what people will think? That you're not the center of the universe for one single day?" I shot back. "That maybe this wedding is about me and Marcus, not about you?" Vivian put a hand on my father's arm. "Darling, maybe we should go back inside. People are staring." "Let them stare," my father said. He looked at me with something like disgust. "Your mother spoiled you? She made you think you could do whatever you wanted without consequences." My hands balled into fists. "Don't you dare talk about Mom. She would hate what you've become." "She would hate what you've become," he countered. "A foolish girl throwing away her future for some immigrant's son." Marcus's father was Puerto Rican. His mother was from the Dominican Republic. They were American citizens who'd worked their entire lives to give their children opportunities. And my father had just reduced them to a slur. Something inside me snapped. "You want to leave?" I said. "Then leave. But know this. You're not just leaving my wedding. You're leaving my life. Because I'm done, Dad. I'm done pretending you're a good man when you're just a bitter, prejudiced bully." Daniel finally spoke up. "Charlotte, calm down. You're being dramatic." "Shut up, Daniel," I said, not looking at him. "You've never had the guts to stand up to him. Don't tell me to calm down." My father got into his Mercedes. Vivian climbed into the passenger seat. Daniel hesitated, then got in the back. "You'll regret this," my father said through the open window. "The only thing I regret," I replied, "is not doing this sooner." He drove away, tires crunching on the gravel. I stood there in my wedding dress, watching the Mercedes disappear down the long driveway. Behind me, I heard footsteps. Uncle Richard appeared at my side. "You okay?" he asked. "No," I said honestly. "But I will be." "Come on," he said gently. "Let's go to your reception. You have a party to attend." But as we walked back toward the venue, I felt a vibration in my clutch. A text message. From my father. "You'll hear from my lawyer on Monday. I'm removing you from the trust. You're on your own now." The reception began at 5:45 p.m. Marcus and I entered to thunderous applause, and for a moment I forgot about my father. The grand hall at Magnolia Plantation was transformed. Chandeliers dripping with crystals, tables covered in ivory linens, centerpieces of roses and hydrangeas. It should have been perfect, except my father's seat at table 12 was conspicuously empty. So were Vivian's and Daniel's. People noticed. Of course they noticed. During dinner, I saw guests whispering, saw them glancing at the empty chairs, saw them looking at me with pity or confusion. Marcus's father, John Rivera, sitting in the place of honor to my right, leaned over. "Charlotte, I'm so sorry about your father. If I had known this would cause problems, Patricia and I would have been happy to sit anywhere." "Mr. Rivera, you have nothing to apologize for," I said firmly. "You and Mrs. Rivera deserve to be exactly where you are. My father is the one who should apologize." John squeezed my hand. He was 61, a retired postal worker with kind eyes and calloused hands. He'd raised 3 children on a modest income, and all 3 had become successful, educated, compassionate adults. He had more class than my father could ever buy. During the toasts, Jessica gave a speech that made everyone laugh and cry. Raphael, Marcus's brother, told stories about Marcus's childhood in North Charleston. Then Uncle Richard stood up. "I wasn't supposed to give a speech tonight," he began, "but I think it's important that everyone here knows something about Charlotte." The room went quiet. Marcus looked at me nervously. I had no idea what Uncle Richard was going to say. "Charlotte's mother, my sister Emma, was the best person I ever knew. Uncle Richard continued. She taught Charlotte to stand up for what's right, even when it's hard. Especially when it's hard. And today, Charlotte proved that she learned that lesson perfectly. He paused, looking directly at me. Emma would be so proud of the woman you've become, the man you've chosen, and the courage you showed today. There wasn't a dry eye at our table. Across the room, I saw several of my mother's old friends wiping their tears. Some of my father's business associates looked uncomfortable. Good, I thought. Let them be uncomfortable. After dinner, during the dancing, a woman approached me. Her name was Margaret Sullivan, 54, and she'd been friends with both my parents. She'd known my mother since college. "Charlotte, I need to tell you something," Margaret said, pulling me aside. "About your father." My pulse quickened. "What about him?" "He's been talking to people. Before the wedding, he's been telling people that Marcus is only marrying you for money, that he's going to divorce you and take half of everything." I felt sick. "He's been spreading lies about my husband?" "For weeks," Margaret said. "I should have told you sooner. I'm sorry. But I thought you should know that tonight, after your father left, several people came to me asking if the rumors were true. I told them absolutely not. But Charlotte, your father has done real damage to Marcus's reputation." Rage boiled in my chest. It wasn't enough for my father to try to control me. He'd tried to destroy Marcus, too. "Thank you for telling me," I managed to say. Margaret hugged me. "Your mother would have handled this exactly the way you did." Don't let your father make you doubt yourself. But I was doubting everything. Because what if my father wasn't done? What if this was just the beginning? At 8:30 p.m. during our first dance, Marcus whispered in my ear, "Whatever happens next, we face it together." "Okay? Okay," I whispered back. But neither of us knew what was coming. Because at 8:47 p.m., a man in a suit walked into the reception. He looked uncomfortable, out of place. He approached Uncle Richard first, spoke quietly to him, then Uncle Richard pointed at me. The man walked over and handed me an envelope. "Charlotte Hayes?" he asked. "Yes?" "You've been served." He walked away, leaving me holding a legal envelope. Marcus stopped dancing. Jessica rushed over. I opened the envelope with shaking hands. Inside was a lawsuit. My father was suing me for $94,672, the total cost of the wedding. He was claiming that by changing the agreed-upon arrangements without authorization, I had breached our contract, and he was demanding full repayment. My father had served me with a lawsuit at my own wedding reception. The lawsuit ruined the rest of the reception. Not because I let it ruin it. I tried to keep dancing, to keep smiling, but because people found out. Guests whispered. Some looked at me with pity. Others looked scandalized. A few of my father's business friends left early, shaking their heads. But Marcus's family rallied around me. His mother Patricia held my hands and told me, "You're part of our family now, mija. We fight for family." His brother Raphael, a paralegal, immediately started looking through the lawsuit documents. Jessica, the lawyer, was on her phone researching South Carolina contract law. Uncle Richard was furious. "I'm calling my attorney first thing Monday morning. This is harassment. This is abuse." At 10:15 p.m., Marcus and I slipped away from the reception early. We drove to the hotel where we were spending our wedding night, a boutique inn in downtown Charleston. We didn't talk much during the drive. What was there to say? In our suite, I finally broke down. I sat on the edge of the bed in my wedding dress and sobbed. Marcus held me, still in his tuxedo, and let me cry. "I thought if I stood up to him, he'd respect me," I said through tears. "I thought he'd see that I was strong, like Mom. But he just hates me now." "He doesn't hate you," Marcus said gently. "He hates that he can't control you. There's a difference. He sued me at my wedding, Marcus. He served me legal papers during our first dance." "I know, baby. I know. We didn't make love that night. We just held each other and tried to make sense of what had happened." At some point, I fell asleep in my wedding dress, makeup smeared, bouquet wilting on the nightstand. On Sunday morning, we were supposed to fly to Italy for our honeymoon. But at 7:30 a.m., Jessica called. "Don't get on that plane," she said immediately. I sat up, groggy. What? Why? Because your father filed a motion for an emergency injunction. He's trying to freeze your assets. He's claiming that you used joint account funds inappropriately and that you owe him immediate repayment. If you leave the country, the judge might rule in his favor by default. Jessica, our flight leaves in 4 hours. I know. And I'm sorry. But if you leave, you could come home to frozen bank accounts, a default judgment, and a much bigger legal mess. We need to fight this now. Marcus took the phone from me. Jessica, what do we need to do? I need Charlotte in my office tomorrow morning at 9 a.m. I'm filing a counter motion and a harassment claim. This is abuse of process, and I'm going to make sure the judge knows it. We canceled our honeymoon. We lost $4,800 in non-refundable deposits. We spent Sunday afternoon in Jessica's office going through every bank statement, every wedding contract, every email exchange with my father. And that's when we found it. At 3:27 p.m. on Sunday, while Jessica was digging through the joint account records, she stopped. Her eyes went wide. Charlotte, when did your mother die? 3 years ago. April 2022. Why? Jessica turned her laptop toward me. Look at this. It was a transfer record. From my mother's estate account to my father's personal account. $247,000, dated May 2022. What is this? I asked. Your mother left you money, Jessica said slowly. In her will. She left you $247,000 in a trust that was supposed to transfer to you on your 30th birthday or your wedding day, whichever came first. My blood turned to ice. I never got that money. Because your father transferred it to himself, Jessica said. He was the executor of her estate. He had access to all the accounts, and he moved your inheritance into his own account the month after she died. Marcus stood up. That's theft. That's exactly what it is, Jessica said. She was already typing furiously. And it changes everything. Because suddenly, this wasn't just about a vindictive father trying to control his daughter. This was about a man who'd stolen from his dead wife's estate. This was criminal. What do we do? I asked. Jessica looked at me, her eyes fierce. We take him down. Monday morning, Jessica filed 3 motions. A counterclaim against my father's lawsuit, a motion to dismiss his emergency injunction, and a criminal complaint for embezzlement and estate theft. By noon, my father's attorney had called Jessica's office 4 times. We were in family court in Charleston County at 2 p.m. My father sat on one side of the courtroom with his lawyer, Martin Fisher, a 60-year-old man in an expensive suit. I sat on the other side with Jessica and Uncle Richard. Marcus was in the gallery behind me. Judge Andrea Simmons, a no-nonsense woman in her mid-50s, reviewed the motions. The courtroom was tense. I could feel my father's eyes on me, but I refused to look at him. Mr. Fisher, Judge Simmons said, your client is suing his daughter for wedding expenses, claiming breach of contract. But Ms. Torres has provided evidence that Mr. Hayes made the original financial commitment voluntarily, with no written contract specifying terms. Is that correct? Your Honor, my client expected that certain traditions would be respected. I didn't ask about traditions, Judge Simmons interrupted. I asked about a contract. Was there one? Fisher shifted. Not a formal written contract, no. But there was an understanding. Understandings aren't enforceable, the judge said. Motion to dismiss granted. The lawsuit is frivolous. My father's face turned red. Vivian, sitting beside him, looked like she might faint. But Judge Simmons wasn't done. However, there's another matter before me, she continued, looking at my father directly. Ms. Torres has filed a criminal complaint alleging that you misappropriated $247,000 from your late wife's estate, funds that were designated for your daughter. Fisher stood up quickly. Your Honor, that's a separate matter entirely. It's not separate when it involves the same parties and speaks to character, Judge Simmons said. I'm ordering a full audit of Emma Hayes' estate to be conducted by an independent forensic accountant. If these allegations are true, Mr. Hayes, you're looking at criminal charges. Do you understand? My father stood up, his voice shaking with rage. This is absurd. That money was used for household expenses for— Sit down, Mr. Hayes, Judge Simmons said coldly. You'll have your chance to explain to the auditor. For now, the emergency injunction is denied, the lawsuit is dismissed, and you're ordered to have no contact with your daughter except through legal counsel. We're done here. The gavel came down. My father looked like he'd been struck. He stumbled out of the courtroom, Vivian and Fisher hurrying after him. I sat there shaking. Marcus put his hands on my shoulders. Jessica was smiling. "That went well," she said. Uncle Richard laughed. Actually laughed. "Your mother would have loved this. She would have brought popcorn." Over the next 2 weeks, the forensic accountant dug through my father's finances. What they found was staggering. Not only had he stolen my inheritance, but he'd been siphoning money from my mother's estate for 3 years. Medical expenses she'd paid before her death had been reimbursed to my father's personal accounts. Life insurance proceeds meant for me had been redirected. Investment accounts had been liquidated. In total, my father had taken $312,089 that should have been mine. On June 3, 2025, criminal charges were filed. My father was arrested at his office in Mount Pleasant. The news made the local paper. His business reputation, the thing he'd valued above everything, was destroyed. Vivian filed for divorce on June 10th. My brother Daniel finally called me on June 12th. "I didn't know," he said. "About the money? About what Dad did?" "Yes, you did," I said. "You knew he was controlling. You knew he was wrong about Marcus. You just didn't want to see it." "I'm sorry, Charlotte." "I know," I said. "But sorry doesn't fix it. I haven't spoken to Daniel since." On June 18th, there was a settlement hearing. My father's attorney offered to return the full $312,989 plus interest if I would agree not to pursue criminal charges. Jessica looked at me, waiting for my answer. I thought about my mother, about her teaching me that forgiveness wasn't the same as letting people escape consequences. About her telling me that real justice meant standing up for what's right, even when it's hard. "No," I said. "He can return the money, but I'm not dropping the charges. He needs to face what he did." My father was convicted on August 4th, 2025. He received 3 years probation, 200 hours of community service, and a permanent mark on his record. He was ordered to repay the full amount, plus $41,672 in penalties and interest. The money was transferred to my account on August 20th. Marcus and I finally took our honeymoon in September to Italy, just like we'd planned. We stayed in Tuscany, drank wine, and tried to forget about courtrooms and lawsuits and family betrayals. But I couldn't completely forget, because I'd learned something important that year. It's October 2025 now, and Marcus and I are sitting on the back porch of our new house in Charleston. We bought it with part of my inheritance, the money my mother wanted me to have. It's not as big as my father's estate, but it's ours. Completely ours. Last week, I saw my father at a coffee shop downtown. He was alone, looking older than I remembered. He saw me too. For a moment, we just stared at each other. Then he looked away and left. I don't feel victorious. I don't feel vindicated. I just feel sad. Sad that he chose control over connection. Sad that he destroyed our relationship over pride and prejudice. Sad that my mother had to die for me to see who he really was. But I also feel free. Free from expectations that never fit me. Free from a version of family that required me to be smaller, quieter, less than who I am. Marcus's parents come over for dinner every Sunday. His mother teaches me to make mofongo and pastelon. His father tells stories about Marcus as a kid, and we laugh until our sides hurt. This is family now. Not because of blood or money or social standing, but because of choice and respect and love. Last month, I started a foundation in my mother's name, the Emma Hayes Scholarship Fund. It provides money for first-generation college students, kids whose parents didn't have degrees, kids who are told they don't belong in certain spaces because of where they come from. Marcus and I awarded the first scholarship last week, $5,000 to a girl named Maria whose parents are janitors. She wants to be a doctor. When we told her she'd won, she cried. Her mother cried. I cried too, because I realized this was what my mother had wanted all along. Not mansions or expensive weddings or the right last names. Just opportunities. Just dignity. Just love without conditions. Uncle Richard comes over for dinner sometimes too. He tells me stories about my mother that I'd never heard. about how she stood up to my father when they were first married, about how she'd wanted to leave him years ago but stayed because of me and Daniel, about how she'd set up that trust fund specifically because she knew my father would try to control me with money after she was gone. She knew exactly who he was, Uncle Richard told me last Tuesday, and she made sure you'd have a way out. I wish I could thank her. I wish I could tell her that her plan worked, that I got out, that I'm happy. My brother Daniel sent me a text message 3 weeks ago. Dad's moving to Florida. Vivian took the house in the divorce. He's broke and alone. Thought you should know. I didn't respond. Not because I'm cruel, but because there's nothing left to say. My father made his choices. He chose pride over his daughter. He chose control over connection. He chose to steal from his dead wife rather than honor her wishes. Those were his choices, not mine. Sometimes people ask me if I regret how I handled my wedding. If I wish I'd just gone along with my father's seating chart, avoided the confrontation, kept the peace. I tell them no, because that day, standing at Magnolia Plantation in my Vera Wang dress, I chose myself. I chose my husband. I chose the kind of person I wanted to be. And yes, it cost me. It cost me my father, my brother, the illusion of a perfect family. It cost me a honeymoon and months of legal battles and nights I couldn't sleep because I was so angry and hurt and confused. But it gave me something too. It gave me clarity. It gave me Marcus's parents welcoming me into their family with open arms. It gave me Uncle Richard back, and through him, pieces of my mother I thought I'd lost. It gave me Jessica's friendship, tested and proven. It gave me the knowledge that I could stand up to the person who'd controlled me my whole life and survive. Yesterday, Marcus and I found out I'm pregnant. We're having a little girl. We're going to name her Emma, after my mother. When I told Marcus, he held me and whispered, "She's going to know her worth from day one. She's going to know that love isn't about control. She's going to know her grandfather's name, but she's never going to meet him, and that's okay. Because she'll have us, and my parents, and Uncle Richard, and a whole family of people who actually understand what family means." I thought about my wedding day, about walking down the aisle on Uncle Richard's arm, about the empty seats where my father and stepmother and brother should have been, about the lawsuit served during my reception, about standing in that courtroom and refusing to back down. And I realized something. My father thought he was punishing me by cutting me off, by suing me, by trying to destroy my reputation and my marriage. But actually, he set me free, because now I get to build my own family, on my own terms, with my own values. I get to teach my daughter that character matters more than bank accounts. That standing up for yourself isn't selfish, it's necessary. That sometimes the people who are supposed to love you most will hurt you worst, and that's not your fault, and you're allowed to walk away. My mother taught me that, and I'm going to teach Emma. Last night, I went through the box of my mother's things that Uncle Richard had given me. Letters, photos, journals. In one of her journals from 2021, a year before she died, I found an entry that made me stop breathing. It said, "If Charlotte ever reads this, you are stronger than you know, braver than you believe, and worthy of a love that doesn't try to make you smaller. If your father tries to control you after I'm gone, fight back. Don't let him steal your light the way he tried to steal mine. I love you. I'm proud of you. And whatever you decide, I'm with you. Always." I sat on my bedroom floor and sobbed. Because she'd known. She'd known exactly what would happen, and she'd left me a message. A permission slip. A blessing. So here's what I want anyone reading this to know. If someone tries to control you with money, with guilt, with threats, with shame, even if that person is family, even if they're supposed to love you, you're allowed to say no. You're allowed to walk away. You're allowed to choose yourself. It won't be easy. It will hurt like hell. You'll lose people you thought you couldn't live without. But you'll find out who you really are. And that person, the one who stands up for herself, who refuses to be controlled, who builds her own life on her own terms, that person is worth fighting for. At my wedding rehearsal, my dad whispered, "You'll ruin this family." Turns out, I didn't ruin anything. I just stopped pretending we were something we weren't. And honestly, that was the best decision I ever made.